the most, important thing in Abu Dhabi is that it's not only about the fact that we are all connected, because at the end of the day, we all report back, to the same entity, which is the leadership of Abu Dhabi. But the most important fact for me, especially coming from Europe, is that we are all pulling in the same direction. And that's the most important thing, and especially the way we embrace innovation. Because of course, when we talk about innovation on a subject as important as, saving lives, it's critical to make sure that you do the right choices. Even if I've been here for more than a dozen of years, that's always impressed me is that the way the regulators are so supportive of innovation and the way we just think that we'll make it feasible. And of course, there are pain points, but they just need to address, and we need to address them all together.
Welcome to HealthBeats. We are one of the world's leading international healthcare podcasts, brought to you in association with Abu Dhabi Global Healthcare Week. I'm Steve Gardner, Managing Director of Healthcare World Magazine and your host here on HealthBeats. And we're actually at Abu Dhabi Global Healthcare Week this week. The conference is winding down over there as we speak. We've had an incredible week, some great conversations, some great discussions. And if you weren't here, why weren't you here? But don't worry, you can still access a huge amount of brilliant content, great discussions, and really insightful debates at HealthBeats. You'll find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from. So subscribe today. If you haven't already, then more fool you. But there you go. Our last conversation of the week is going to be a really, really interesting one. I'm here with Robin Elodie, who is the head of clusters at the Abu Dhabi Investment Office, to have a conversation, actually, that I think is a great one to finish the week with, because we've talked all week about some of the amazing innovations, some of the amazing ambition and drive that there is going on in healthcare and life sciences across Abu Dhabi. And now you're going to tell us how people can get involved. Is that right? How's your week been, Elodie? How have you found it?
It was an incredible week. It's always a pleasure to be able to welcome in Abu Dhabi all our partners, and to see also that all the things we've been working together with the different stakeholders in Abu Dhabi are really being shaped and becoming a reality, and growing each time and each year in a bigger direction.
I think one of the things that always amazes me, and I've been coming to the Middle East now for about 10 or 15 years, is that sense of collaboration, is that sense of ambition and drive and the willingness to listen and understand and bring in the best examples from across the global economy, across global health systems, across biosciences. Is that something that makes your job fun, that makes your job easier?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, this is very also embedded and echoing, the history of the UAE, where at the beginning, this country was formed in a very harsh environment. So the population and the leaders have no other, choice than to be able to be open, for partnership, to be able also to be welcoming, new ideas, to be able to shape that young country. And that's what we are trying to replicate now in everything we do as ADIO, is really to follow the guidance of the leadership and to try to see how we can help co-creating, the future of healthcare. That's the most important thing for us.
So what brought you personally to Abu Dhabi? What's your history? How did you end up here?
So the first time I came to Abu Dhabi was 22 years ago. At that time, I was working.
About 11.
So at that time, I was working in the aerospace industry,
Right.
and I had the privilege to work on the first aerospace manufacturing site in the region
Right.
a long time ago. And to be honest, at that time, I'm originally from France, and I've been very impressed by what the leadership wanted to achieve and the fact that they were really willing, to try to understand what was being done in the mature ecosystem and how they can do something very unique. Their point was not to replicate what was already existing, it's really to bring their own vision and innovation as a benefit of this new economy. And since then, I moved back my family to the UAE and to Abu Dhabi 14 years ago. I have the privilege that the UAE is called home for my son. We're born here. And since then, I joined Abu Dhabi government 7 years ago to work in different topics, all leading to deep tech and scaling industries, and how we could shape, new economies.
So the obvious question really is, how would you categorize the opportunities that exist in healthcare and life sciences here? What kind of opportunities, what kind of organizations, businesses should be thinking about Abu Dhabi as an investment opportunity?
That's a very good question. As I was saying, our point is not to try to do a copycat of what is existing. So what we've been doing, because we just launched Helm, our life sciences cluster in partnership with Department of Health at Abu Dhabi Global Health Week. And when we're putting together the strategy, of the cluster, we were thinking about that. What's the value proposition of Abu Dhabi? Why people will move from San Diego, will move from Munich in Germany, to come here and co-create with us. So we've been working on a couple of sub-segments where we think Abu Dhabi has a very strong proposition, not only for Abu Dhabi, but also to be able to use, Abu Dhabi as a platform to be able to design, innovate, create, manufacture in certain case, or develop in case of software, these new services or new drugs. And from there being able to export, using our platform, logistic platform. So we are focusing on a couple of subclusters. The first one is everything linked to innovation, advanced therapies, novel therapies, and all the manufacturing, linked to that down the line. The second thing is to work on everything around precision medicine, leveraging especially, our genomic database and our very unique national genome program. The third one is around everything linked to manufacturing on the drug side, but also linked to medtech. And the last part, which is also a very critical one for the future of health tech, is linked to digital health and AI. As you may know, the UAE and Abu Dhabi has been investing a lot in AI, is now building global leaders in that scene. And that's why we wanted, to be able to leverage that to really become one of the global leaders in that particular topic.
I think the point about the Emirate genome program is a particularly well-made one, isn't it? Because the fact that you have a country in which 70% of the population, and growing all the time, have had their genome sequenced, that creates a really unique opportunity for pharma and medtech, for clinical trials, for all of that stuff.
Definitely. We've been very proud to announce our collaboration with GSK on this particular topic, because we joined forces with GSK and Department of Health to be able to support a multi-omic institute in the UAE, not only in Abu Dhabi, but also to be able to serve the region. And one of their interests was indeed, to be able to have access to a variety of genomic database, which is not the case in more mature countries where most of the database is linked to Caucasian people. And we've been also announcing our partnership with Illumina to see how we could put together also with DOH, a center of innovation around genomics. So it's definitely one of the key topics.
It's a really good point that you raised there, actually, because if you look at clinical trials data over the last 10 or 20 years, so much of it was based on Caucasian populations, white European, white American populations. The ability to actually be able to pull together clinical trials data based on a different cultural group, that's massive, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And to be honest, it's very unfair. Why only, I don't know, a third of the population, should be sequenced? Yeah. Why we have, like disease that are growing in our part of the world, and they need to be addressed.
And also drugs will react differently to people from different cultural backgrounds. So to be able to make sure that you're understanding how a particular treatment is going to react in a particular human body is hugely important. And I guess from a government of Abu Dhabi point of view, that's been a very deliberate strategy, hasn't it? To create that genomics program as a way of actually providing an economic benefit back to this country?
Definitely. As I was saying, this is a core component, especially with the different verticals we are trying to scale in AI, with especially also all the work which has been done by M42 on this topic. But I don't think we should limit our impact to only digital health and AI and the genomics oasis. We are also working to make sure that Abu Dhabi is a solution of choice for pharma leaders, to be able to get them, having part of their manufacturing in Abu Dhabi, and to make sure that we are able to attract, very critical type of technology that we be able also to serve the sovereignty of the country.
There's a really good point there about the meeting of genomics and AI. The computing power required to, and the AI capability required to utilize that genomic database also gives you an opportunity, doesn't it, to attract AI development, to attract digital health development, to attract technological development. How big a target is that in terms of bringing organizations into the Emirate?
Yes, definitely. And this was part, of the philosophy of the cluster we launched with DOH, is that we want to be seen as one ecosystem. It's on one side, as you were saying, bringing researchers, bringing inventors also and innovators. So everything linked to labs, institutes, startups, but also at the same time, bringing, as I was saying, the leaders in that field to make sure that we have the full value chain working together in Abu Dhabi. And most importantly, another thing which is one of our core value proposition is the support of DOH, regarding regulation.
Yeah.
And you were mentioning clinical trial, that's a key cornerstone, meaning like this type of development takes time. And the new policy of DOH regarding clinical trials, acceptance has been really a cornerstone for us to be able to attract these companies, because we are able to be faster than anyone without compromising the safety, of the patients. So that's just like the ideal scenario to make it happen.
Well, it's really interesting actually, because the great example in that regard is your home country, is France, where they've had an early access program for a number of years, which allows pharma companies to get drugs into the system, into the population, with the consent of the individuals taking part in those early access programs. That's something that you've kind of built on here, is it? And something you're also rolling out here?
Yeah, definitely. As we were saying, what will be unique in Abu Dhabi compared to France is the diversity of our genomic database.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I guess kind of moving on from that a little bit, there are a number of different factors that any organization is going to think about when they're looking at investing in a new territory or in a new country. I know ease of doing business, taxation, logistics, workforce. Exactly. How are you thinking about those challenges, and how are you thinking about how you support those different elements?
So we've been in discussion in the last months, with some of the biggest pharma leaders to be able to position and localize in Abu Dhabi some manufacturing sites. And it's always a very interesting point, because as we were saying, people who doesn't know our part of the world, are coming with this question, which is totally natural. And what we've been doing is, of course, like networking them for our ecosystem. So they were able to see on one side, even if we have a small population, how we were working on being able, to nurture talent thanks to amazing research lab and universities, as only to name a few of them, as Khalifa Universities, UAE Universities, NYU Abu Dhabi. And this was really a game changer for them, to see our student, university, and academia ecosystem. And on the other side, I think they've been very impressed to see how performant our infrastructure is, and without, of course, mentioning our logistic hub. And the fact that in other sectors, where we started maybe earlier than in healthcare and life sciences, we've been able to grow in a couple of years, like world leaders. And I don't want to do the list of these sectors, but name it. We did it in aerospace. We did it in logistics. We are doing it like across, the different sectors of the value chain. And after being able to see, and to feel on one side what we've been able to achieve, as I was saying, in the last 40 years, and the fact that everyone was working together in the same direction, and especially from a regulatory standpoint, this was, I think, a game changer that moved the needle to now have this future project being localized in Abu Dhabi.
We both come from Western European countries. I'm sure you're aware, as I am, that there are, in my own experience of working in this region over many years, is that there's no part of the world where people are more willing to give you the time and the politeness to listen and want to hear and understand what you have to say. The advice I always give to international organizations coming into this region is don't come and pitch. Don't come and try and sell your thing or assume you've got something that is better than they have
I
here.
totally agree.
It's about partnership.
You need to feel it, and you need to be really embedded in what we are trying to do, and you need to share the same vision, because I think that's the most important thing about the leadership of the country is the vision, And that's what I'm telling people is that, yes, the vision is big, but look what the country has been able to achieve, and especially in Abu Dhabi in a couple of years. So for me, there is no doubt that will be, the end point. The only question is how, what will be the journey, but who cares? The important is that we reach the point at the end and we reach it through very solid and long-lasting partnership.
I mean, that's a huge benefit, of course, of Abu Dhabi is the fact that you have those sovereign wealth funds in place because you've got that situation where by investing in the ecosystem here, you also have access to funding and access to the opportunity of funding. I guess also there's a point there from a healthcare point of view. You've got an incredible healthcare ecosystem. You've got a very ambitious, forward-thinking Department of Health. You have M42 and Pure Health as large, dominant healthcare players who are looking for innovation, who are looking... You mentioned the digital health piece earlier on. How important is it that you have that, I guess, less fractured ecosystem? You know where the key players are and who the key organizations are, and you can make that. How important is it to have that?
I think the most, important thing in Abu Dhabi is that it's not only about the fact that we are all connected, because at the end of the day, we all report back, to the same entity, which is the leadership of Abu Dhabi. But the most important fact for me, especially coming from Europe, is that we are all pulling in the same direction, And that's the most important thing, and especially the way we embrace innovation.
How important is consistency? Because I think one of the issues that we have in health systems around the world is that they're subject to the winds of political change. You see changes of leadership on a regular basis that detract from the ability to deliver an overall vision over a long period of time. Is that consistency an important factor in the decision-making of companies that
Of course. And I think it's also one of our key value proposition. It's the stability in the vision. The new release plan for Abu Dhabi regarding the Falcon economy brings a vision towards 2045. And the fact that there is also a lot of stability in the leadership, So that helps reassure foreign companies that there will be one vision and key milestone, to deliver towards that vision.
The thing is now, you've got, I think the neutral is a great word because you have the relationship with the BRICS economies, with the European Union, with the UK, with the US, which I guess also massively broadens the pool of potential countries from which you can attract investment.
Yeah, definitely. As I was saying, I think this is really embedded into our history. That's how the region, was doing business and commercial and trading, in the first years. And I think we just took that vision and were able to grow it.
Well, I'd invest in Abu Dhabi. I know that. That's all the time we've got, unfortunately. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Elodie. I love the fact that you clearly have passion for your adopted home. You clearly love this place, which I think makes you a great advocate for Abu Dhabi, as indeed am I. I've spent a great week here at Abu Dhabi Global Healthcare Week, done an enormous amount of work with leadership across this region. Can't recommend it highly enough. I also can't recommend highly enough that you subscribe to HealthBeats, because not only do you get great conversations like this one, but you get access to a whole raft of content. So get yourself onto Spotify, get yourself onto Apple Podcasts, get yourself to every other platform you possibly can. Subscribe, give us a fantastic rating, and keep your eye out for the next tranche of content. It's been a real pleasure. Goodbye for now.
Thank you so much for having us.